1st of December. Please ask you to silence or turn off your cell phones if you have one with you. And, please join me and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Ms. Domingo, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Clark. Reed. Here. Smith.
Here.
Lawler.
Here.
Spicer.
Here.
Williamson.
Here.
And Mayor Atchison.
Here. Okay. First item we're going to discuss is, well, it's what the study session is all about, is the sidewalk fund. And so do you want to give us an overview of it, Mr. Phillips?
Basically, the sidewalk fund is the fund that we collected over that 10-year period of time, $50 assessments on each property. The fund value, there have been a number of projects done out of that fund. Obviously, there was about $1.5 million brought into that fund. There's now $450,000 left in the fund. If you just kind of take a look at services, and we just kind of went by services, so the fund was designated to have about that much. Going back through some of the records that I can find, there have been some $100,000 projects, quite a few projects where we've done entire street sidewalks over the last 10 years. But we have not done any projects for the last 3 that I know of. So that money is there, and that's the discussion for tonight. Is really the resolution and opinion of the council and opinion of the attorney as to what we do with those funds and how we expend them. Is that? And
the taxation or the collection was based on a $50 a year assessment on all property owners?
That's as I understand it, yes. All property owners paid a $50 assessment, whether they were to receive a benefit from that or not. They were all assessed at $50.
Okay. Councilwoman Spicer.
Thank you, Mayor. Director Phillips, can you tell me what happened, refresh my memory, or maybe I was not even at the meeting when this was brought up. Why has the money been left sitting? Did you need directions to continue and didn't get any, or can you just tell me why?
There was some confusion as to how to spend it. I've been in the job now for almost a year, and I've talked to several people. The last conversation I really had with Finance Director Mead was that was being left there because we weren't sure if that was going to have to be refunded to property owners or not. So there weren't any more projects taken out of that. When Cullen Harkness, our city attorney, came on board, I think this was probably 2 years ago, correct me if I'm wrong, Cullen, that you took a look at that and found that maybe you can add some the opinion that you found at that time.
I think I was first asked to weigh in on it by council.
2014.
Yeah, 2014. It was the assessment had been in place for several years, and it predated my tenure with the city. But in 2014 was the first time I weighed in on the appropriateness of it, and then the council and the former manager decided what they wanted to do for the balance of the assessment, because I think at that point in 2014 we were left with 5 years. We were halfway through the assessment.
For 6 years at 14. 6 years. Started in 08. Mm-hmm.
And I think the most recent discussion we had on it, we only had a year left. So
it was just kind of left at that point, and then I guess I'll go ahead.
Well, can you just include in your response you're probably going to do now, just add in for me, so because you're not saying that there are no sidewalks that need to be done in the city. We just... Oh,
no, absolutely not. There are plenty of sidewalks that need to be done, and crosswalks and other walkways that projects have come up for. It's just In all honesty, I guess if we look at the last 3 years, we've had Scott Kipp as interim and acting city manager for 18 months of the last 2 years. So there hasn't been a consistent leadership to push any agenda forward as to what we do with this. So I was uncomfortable making a decision, as I stated in our budget meeting, until there was a complete legal opinion that we should expend this in what way. Once directed how to spend it, I have no problem spending it. There's plenty of projects to get done. I just want to make sure that it's appropriate and proper, and I have the council backing to do so.
Councilman Williamson.
Thank you.
What have other municipalities done with these funds? Because from what I understand, other municipalities who've like charged this assessment and then had to stop doing that, what did they do with the remainder? Or
To be honest with you, Councilman Williamson, I mean, I've never seen a city or any municipality do this in this fashion. The way it's supposed to be done is with special assessment districts. That's the way, I mean, at least the municipalities that I work with, it's done as special assessment districts, which I can only surmise it was probably set up this way because a special assessment district, you're going to have larger amounts of money assessed to certain properties probably for a shorter period of time, and so and I don't want to surmise what the previous council did, but I think the idea was do it over a long period of time, small amounts of money with the idea that people won't feel the sting of the finances, but you know, I think it amounts to an illegal tax.
right, that's kind of what I'm getting at. So we essentially did something we weren't supposed to do by assessing this money, and now we have it. And there are properties, homeowners who were assessed this money around the city who probably didn't see improvements to the sidewalks in front of their homes, which was the point of the assessment, was to improve property of the ratepayer. So we didn't do that.
Correct.
So now we have this money, and we're gonna maybe do some projects across the city that technically benefit all residents, but with money that was illegally obtained.
So I mean, the hallmark of a special assessment is that the property that's assessed or the individual that's assessed has to receive the benefit. And so, you know, conversely, when you think more in the vein of a tax, you know, everybody in the city pays, say, property taxes, but, you know, there may be, you know, somebody paying in and say precinct 1 for something that really ultimately may only benefit people in precinct 6, but it's a tax, it's permitted by law, so
that's a tax, and a special assessment, which this was for, is supposed to directly benefit the payer of that assessment.
right. So anybody that's paying in should be deriving a direct benefit from it, which is why it's done as special assessment districts and not citywide.
So as we've collected this for this fund, did we keep track of who actually received? What property did receive improvement based on the assessment, and then the property, obviously, there would be the properties that didn't.
Well, I think part of the problem with this is we did do a number of projects through the years, and through the resolution, it states that property owners would be assessed 50% of that cost of that project, and there were no bills sent to anybody that I know of. So that creates it is a problem, no matter how we look at it.
Councilwoman Lawler.
Thank you, Mayor. I was thinking about this fund, and hopefully the right thing that I thought to do with this fund, since each precinct put money in on this fund, I think that it should be split 6 ways, because each precinct contributed to this fund, and each precinct expects something to happen with the fund that they contributed to in their precinct. So I think it is fair to say to split it 6 ways. That way each precinct can get a benefit from it. Ms. Reed, if she wants to do her sidewalk at the up at the park, she has an option to do it. Each one of us, if I can name at least like 2 sidewalks that are really bad, that I could use in my precinct. We do have the GIS system that says what properties in each precinct need work the most, we could probably take a look at that and see what, each precinct has, or needs. We just had a lady receive her, stand-up wheelchair. She may need something in her precinct to be able to get around and, you know, more easily. So I think that this fund should be split 6 ways.
Well, okay. In kind of a response to that, what I did after our council meeting where we talked about the budget, I put Stacy Stewart in my car, and we drove around every cross street in the city, and we found 319 non-ADA compliant crosswalks within the city in every precinct. If you're thinking about cost-wise, now those are in varying degrees of need. Some of them have somewhat of a ramp, but the curb is too high. So there's issues with many of them, and some in precincts, I think every precinct, there was no ADA compliant crosswalk whatsoever. There was a 6-inch curb. So if you're looking at 319 crosswalks, that is a true public benefit across the city to create that ADA compliant crosswalk. We want people walking in our community. Now, I have heard that, you know, we can get them across the street, but if they go 20 more feet, they're going to be in sidewalk that they can't walk on anyway, so what's the use of doing that? But I think getting the crosswalks done with a public fund would go a long way for our city to benefit everyone. I talked with Mickey Bittner about the cost of that. He said a good estimation or rule of thumb would be $1,000 per ramp. So if we have 319, that's $319,000 plus possibly some engineering costs. That still leaves $150,000 or around $150,000. We also have funds that we need to spend in our non-motorized fund of about $94,000 as well for sidewalks, signs, and different things like that. So totaling it all up, we have well over $500,000 that we can get out and do projects. I will tell you that our guys, our street department guys, have gone out and have done quite a bit of sidewalk work this fall. 20-foot, 30-foot sections we can manage. We don't have to contract those out. So we've gone out and taken the front-end loader and ripped out sidewalk and replaced it. We've done that in a number of places around town, and we're going to continue to do that. But when we get into an entire run or a whole street or a mile of sidewalk, that's probably a little bit more than our guys can legitimately do well. And that we'd want to contract out.
Councilwoman Reed.
Did we get a quote or a price on the sidewalks around Holland Park?
The best, what we got from Whiteman and Associates was an engineering, pre-engineering type of report cost of $14,300, I believe. And then by doing the measurements around Holland Park, we would need approximately 75 yards of concrete to do the 5-foot walkway. At about $100 a yard, it would be a good estimate. So then if you add the contractors in there, which usually doubles that, it would end up being around $164,000. Would be a good, fair guesstimate. Yes. Well, all of it needs to be taken up. And then on Cass Street, it needs to be completely dug and built. So, and then, you know, a good estimation on costs would be the $100 per yard. And then, like I said, contractors are typically double that material rate. And we know that the cost estimate from Mickey for the engineering on it to make sure that we have the right grades on the ramps and the right structure of the ramps would be $14,300.
Councilwoman
So
Spicer.
you got a total of, it's more than 164,000 then?
No, it'd actually be, if, by my calculations and looking at it, it'd be 75 yards of concrete, so that's 75,000. Double that for the contractor, so that's 150, and then 14.3 for the engineering on that project would be approximately 164,000.
Councilwoman Spicer.
Thank you, Mayor. And that estimate is probably low. It's probably gonna end up being more than that, and usually.
You know, I'm hoping not. I really am, because we can, you know, we do have the ability to get in and do some of that work. So, you know, our guys, but as far as the engineering and making sure grades are appropriate for senior citizens and walking, I think we want to have that staked out and engineered, for sure.
Okay, thank you. My question to you, Director Phillips, is you stated that you know that there are 319 crosswalks in need of repair to be ADA compliant.
Correct.
Do you also know the sidewalks in detail, ones that might just need a little repair and some that needs a lot more? Do you have that information available?
Emily Smith really tried to work hard on that through her tenure here as a VISTA student and never had great success with that. There are areas within our mapping system for sidewalks where we see a lot of problem areas that might just need some grinding. Right now, we have a small, just push hand grinder that's going to do a terrible job. We're looking at putting that onto a skid steer or a bobcat, getting one that would actually take care of sidewalks the way that we need to grade them. But again, the best way to repair a sidewalk is to not put asphalt on it to ramp an entire piece up, and it's not really to grind it down, because you're creating a structural issue then as well. It's to tear it out and re-pour it. I know that on North Street, we just finished North Street on North and Maple Street on the northwest corner. The guys did about a 20-foot section there, dug up the tree roots, did a fine job on that. So I know there are areas that we can meet that need and get those sidewalks done. But again, it's a huge problem throughout the entire city, and even $500,000 is not going to do all of the sidewalks. And we also have 6 areas of completely missing sidewalk. Wild Street has no sidewalk whatsoever down Wild Street. So there's no connector, and you have
Chauncey Street on the one side.
Chauncey, there's many areas with just one-sided sidewalks. And then if you go back to the ordinance of sidewalks that's in our book, our ordinance book, you know, property owners, new property owners or new builders are required to put sidewalk in. And the assessment of that repair, any repairs, is to really by ordinance go to the property owner and be assessed to the property owner. So I think I'm kind of throwing a lot of information out there, but it comes down to we have $450,000 approximately in the sidewalk fund, and we have $94,000 in our non-motorized fund through our Act 51 for non-motorized projects.
So and if you would chime in if I get this wrong, City Attorney. So the money was collected under a special assessment, but in fact was just levied against every property owner, regardless of whether they did or did not have a sidewalk, and without any connection to what the actual cost of whatever repairs were done. So it was correct. It was collected inappropriately or incorrectly. Some of that money has been spent over the 10-year period. I guess it started in 2008. 2008. So yeah. We're in the 11th year. But we are where we are. We don't have time machines. We can't go back and undo what's been done. So here we have $450,000 plus another 96 or so in the
We can
non-motorized.
add to that.
And we, as a council, need to decide how to do the right thing in what's the most appropriate way of expending those dollars that is going to have benefit to the general population. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. Councilman Smith, I'm sorry, Williams. Jesus. You two look so much
I'm not
alike.
that handsome.
You look so much alike.
Okay, handsome. I had a question about the S squared project. So ever since I've been on council, the AmeriCorps Vistas have been working on an S squared project that one of them had wrapped up just in the last couple of months, probably like
Right.
4 or 5 months ago.
Unless,
Emily, yes.
Yes.
So are we using that data to inform any of the work that we're doing around sidewalks or cleaning up sidewalks? So one of the things that I'm afraid of, from my vantage point, is that we're going to do some special projects and expend funds, but there's not a real method to the madness of doing it. Because, so I hear anecdotally, we can think of sidewalks all over town that are either in disrepair or need improvement or are not ADA or senior friendly, ADA accessible or senior friendly. But I haven't actually seen the data points about that. So you rode around and you actually put together 319 crosswalks. I'm sure there are many other sidewalk pieces and chunks all over the community that are disintegrating or need some help. What is and maybe the city manager can chime in here, is there a plan to figure out what is the most important piece, like what rises to the top as far as priority when it comes to sidewalks and accessibility in the community? And I'm asking this because frankly I'm nervous that the next, at the 7 o'clock meeting, we're being asked to vote on looking at a project around Holland Park, but that's not in the context of a major sidewalk improvement plan throughout the city. And so I'm nervous that if we could possibly expend $160,000 unwisely, when we know that we could have broader benefit around the entire city. So can someone speak to that for me and help clarify that?
I think that's a question better for me to answer. As we discussed during the budget work session and as we're discussing tonight, what we're trying to do is we're trying to come up with a fair, uniform, and consistent way of how we handle the remaining funds that we have, given the circumstances in which those funds were collected. There is no way that we are going to be able to give a specific benefit to every property in the city, which is a requirement for a special assessment. So my recommendation to the council is that we use the funds. Kent has already gathered a lot of data on the handicap ramping at intersections, which would be a general benefit to everyone because everyone has the opportunity to use our sidewalks. And then whatever funds are left over, we should be improving the public portions of sidewalks, the sidewalks that are the responsibility of the city to maintain around public facilities, whether it's Holland Park, some of our other parks, City Hall, in front of our parking lots, what have you. I think that is the best way to use those funds, because if we start trying to divide money up into, and I appreciate trying to make sure that money is dispersed into each precinct, but there's a lot of other questions that come up with that. Well, did each precinct pay equally into the fund? I would say that's probably not the case. Depending on the number of properties in each precinct, I'm sure some precincts paid more. Then another issue that comes up is, okay, if we select specific sections of sidewalk that abut private property, some people get improvements, others do not. How do you make that determination? How do you determine, how does someone receive some benefit from these funds when they paid into the fund but they have no sidewalks in front of their house? My properties I own 2 lots. Mine is one of those in question. The sidewalk ends at my property line and it picks up on the other side of my property on my street. So the previous owners of my house were in that situation. How do we make it fair to everyone? I think if the council establish a policy for paying down this fund first of all, improving all of the handicap ramps at intersections that need to be replaced. And then use the rest of the funds to improve the public portions of sidewalks, those that are abut public facilities. That is a benefit to the general public. Everybody would get a benefit from that, and we won't get into some of these other issues that we're dealing with. And then moving forward, sidewalk improvements have to be discussed as part of a comprehensive street improvement program. And we will be having those discussions and my ideas. I've talked with some council members individually on it, but we need to get into that for a long-term solution to sidewalk improvements. But that's my recommendation for these funds.
Yeah. Sorry?
I have to wait, right? I have to wait.
Councilwoman Reed.
Okay, I'm back on Highland Park again. I will be on Highland Park again. I'm looking at Highland Park because, okay, you got the part where there's trees that has broke up the sidewalk, which is a hazard to little kids coming there. You also have a part that it does not matter what precinct you live in, you have access to it. It's not just a precinct 2 park, it's a Albion City Park, which allows anybody in the city or out of the city or wherever to come to it. Okay, so you want it in the best condition. Next thing is we've got the seniors, which are right across the street, who needs something safe and solid to walk on so that they're not catching their foot in things and falling. They don't like walking the walk like I told you out through going towards Brown's Field out there because there's trees and there's high grass and they don't know who's in there or what's in there. So, you know, I'm for that, not just because I'm working on that park, but for those reasons, it gives access to seniors to do things outside. I also have understood that there's some things that some people around Albion want to do in the park. One art teacher was asking me, could she do art stuff out in the park with the kids this year? I said, fantastic, you know. I mean, there's a lot of things that could go on out there and that probably would go on out there. And the sidewalks need to be expanded for all reasons. So.
Councilwoman Spicer.
Thank you. I think I lost my thought. The city manager mentioned in his recommendation the sidewalks at intersections and things like that. And you said something about second, after that was completed, you would then recommend that public facilities where the general public had access. Do we have an idea, a list of the public, do you know what public facilities you would suggest might be in need of?
I do not yet have a list, and I don't know if Kent has already started to gather that as part of his asset management planning. Okay. So you bring up an excellent point, and that was going to be my next comment, and that was if our second priority is looking at other city facilities, we need to assess the condition of the sidewalks around those city facilities and prioritize based on their condition, based on level of use, and whatever other criteria council may come up with that we use to prioritize how we use the remaining funds for city facilities. But it sounds like Kent's already got some work underway, so.
Get the nod. The nice thing about this is I think we do have a multitude of options as to what we do. To answer Shane's question first, or Councilmember Williamson's question first, no, we don't have any comprehensive capital improvement plans right now. We have asset management plans that I've been pulling together over the last 6 months or so. We need a comprehensive capital improvement plan that includes all of that, and we will work diligently to get that. But right now we have areas of sidewalk that show up on our GIS as red X. You can't even see an X because it's all red X's. And then we have areas that haven't even been assessed and put onto the GIS. So, but let me segue over then to answer another question, if you don't mind. I get McAuliffe and McIntosh mixed up all the time, but
You get what's that?
McAuliffe and McIntosh parks mixed up all the time. But McIntosh is the larger park off of Dean Drive, I believe.
Off of- Oh, that's right.
Am I
Yes,
correct?
it is.
Yes.
Yes.
We have a pavilion there, and we have a bathroom there. We have no way for anyone in a wheelchair to even get access to that pavilion. We have no way for a person or a wheelchair-bound or ADA person, Americans with disabilities, to get to the bathroom because there's no sidewalk there. We also have in Victory Park, well, McAuliffe is the same way. There are pads in front of the bathrooms,
Which one
but
is
they're almost
McAuliffe?
inappropriate.
Okay.
Which one is McCullough?
McIntosh is the one that's up by, behind.
Lincolnshire.
Lincolnshire.
Okay,
And
and McAuliffe is
Is
Tillman
the
Field.
one down by Austin Avenue.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Right,
There
okay,
are
okay.
pads there at McAuliffe to get into the restrooms, but there's no connection. It's through dirt and whatever to get into the restrooms. So there are improvements there that need to be made. Actually, even at Victory Park, the bathrooms are at the band shell. There is no sidewalk to get to those bathrooms. And the band shell, through the community partners that we have that do the music at the shell, you know, you're talking 5,000 to 10,000 people a year that come through there, and elderly and just people with disabilities have no access to get to the restroom, or even a pad to get down to watch the music from. I think there's a lot of improvements we could make in our public parks with this fund, as well as ADA ramps, including Holland Park. You know, in all honesty, I've been to several meetings since that's come up, and what I see from a lot of elderly people are the nodding heads when that walkway is talked about around Holland Park. So, you know, I'm kind of asking for what we want to do, but I think if we choose to do something and we look at ADA compliant crosswalks for now and improvements to parks for accessibility, then we've pretty much gone across a benefit for everyone.
Lawler and then Councilwoman Lawler.
Thank you. That's why my suggestion would be to, in each precinct, to divide the money up for each precinct, to pick a project in each precinct. I mean, you're gonna have a lot of angry people that are gonna be mad about, I put money into this, I should benefit from it. I'm not saying that they don't benefit from, like, crosswalks and things like that, but they want to see stuff happening in their area that they put money into. So I do believe that you will have a lot of angry people if we don't find something in each project, in each precinct to do a project on for this sidewalk fund. But I'm sticking with divided 6 ways and find a project.
Councilman Williamson.
So I was going to ask Mr. McCleary and Mr. Phillips, you know, one of the things that I'm nervous about at the next meeting is we're talking about a very specific project, and what we've heard at this meeting were a multitude of projects all over the place. And I know everyone hates a work group or a committee, but I don't think we're pouring concrete for a little while.
Right.
It's a little cold out. So I don't think there's a gun to our head about time here in solving this particular problem, but could there be a work group put together with Mr. Phillips and Mr. McCleary to then go through and assess it? Because I understand the urgency in doing something. We have this money, I want the spring to happen and see a bunch of construction trucks at every corner and all the different areas fixing some things. That would be very exciting to everybody here. Is there a way that we could form a work group of interested people citywide with equal and or equitable representation from the different precincts and parks, and come up with a way for you can lead that, or you could lead that, Mr. Clary. I don't want to, again, not telling anyone what to do over here. Figure out how to spend that money and bring that plan to council. That way we can kind of approve that and move forward. Is there a way we could do that?
yes, and I would love seeing us work forward in that way. What I would ask is that each council person select a person from their precinct to serve on that.
If that's
Work
the
group.
council wants to move forward, yeah.
Councilman Smith.
Boy, going all the way back to when this whole thing was written, and I read this to the people of my precinct at our precinct meeting the other night, and it was amazing how many people were just scratching their heads. And I won't go through it here, but if you read the original resolution 2008-08, within one paragraph, it contradicts itself twice as to, so yeah, there's nothing we can do about that now. But as to how the money was gathered and how it was to be spent. But as has been pointed out to me, we can't go back and fix the past. I will say that the ADA compliant ramps at each corner, I love that idea. That's great. I have a number of people in my precinct that are wheelchair bound, and that would be wonderful for them. But again, you put in an ADA ramp and 20 feet later, you've got the tree roots pushing the sidewalk up to where it'll flip a wheelchair. And then again, as far as, doing things on sidewalks that above properties that are for the entire city or publicly owned or whatever. Precinct 3 is, I would guess, about 99.75 residential. We don't have that public sidewalk in our area. Just about everything we have is going to be in front of a residential property or a church. So I don't see where we are going to benefit from fixing, our park doesn't have sidewalks. We have a river. So I don't see where that's going to benefit. And I hate to break things up in precincts because we're one city. We're all trying to fight to make our city better. But, if it comes down to that, I see we're losers. Thank you.
Councilwoman Reed.
I would just like to say, if we're going to set up a committee like that, could we please have set a length of time that you're going to do it? Because when spring starts to where the ground is thawed out and stuff like that, if we're going to work on the park, I'd like to get that done. Because then that's part of, we plan on having a grand opening for that park this year. And so if we can start as soon as possible getting things done, then I'll know just, how to plan things better.
Councilman Williamson.
Okay, I have a couple of questions, and maybe Cullen and Darwin can help with this too, because I do want to address Councilman Smith's concern, because I share with you that concern as well. So, it is your legal opinion that we cannot spend that money on sidewalks directly in front of people's properties?
I don't think that would make sense, because there's absolutely no way, with the amount of money that you have, that you're going to be able to spend that money such that it meets the definition of a special assessment and benefit everyone that paid in. I think what would make sense, and at least make the collection and spending of that money more legitimate, is to do something more like what the manager has suggested in doing for example, the ramps throughout the city, public sidewalks, things like that, because arguably everyone in the city would benefit from that, as opposed to fixing a sidewalk in front of, house A, house B, and house C, because, fixing sidewalks in precinct 3 is not going to benefit the people that paid in precinct 1.
Well, okay, for example, on Erie, and I believe, the corner of Erie and Superior, and that runs, if you go all the way back towards, there's the senior apartments that are back there, there's the church and the single apartments. Is that considered precinct 3 still?
On
Okay.
the south side's 3, on the north side's 2.
So, would improvements to that area, like running along that major, Erie, even though there are some residential properties there and some business properties on the other side of it, if there were improvements that need to be made there, does that meet the criteria to be able to spend this money, in your opinion?
I would avoid doing it in front of the residences because I think you're gonna run into the same issue. I mean, if you're,
So what's the liability in doing it in front of residences? Because what I'm wondering is if a resident could actually raise hell about it and sue us, and because their sidewalks weren't done, why haven't they done it yet?
I guess, here's my thought, in terms of potential culpability, that the city would have, that's a discussion I would have with council in a closed session as opposed to an open session.
Okay, because not the city attorney, but Miller Canfield at the time was advising the city about the special assessment and said, while it was unusual, it wasn't illegal. But that has since changed, because now you're saying it was improper for us to collect the tax.
I think that, so I can tell you this, I was asked for my opinion back in 2014, and I think again a couple of years later, my opinion about how this was set up hasn't changed. I've never seen a special assessment set up like this in the 11 years that I've been practicing law, all the municipalities I've represented. This doesn't strike me as a special assessment. It strikes me as it's set up more like a tax.
Well, so I still want to say that I'm very supportive of moving forward with a work group representative of each precinct, and I think it would be important for the precincts that have majority residential properties to have representation on there to make sure that they have proper say in how that money is being spent in the future. That way, people in precinct 3 and others that might not benefit as greatly from this particular special assessment at least know that their money is being used properly.
Councilwoman Spicer.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that if my feelers are interpreting correctly, it sounds like for the most part, we're all, not all, but the majority of us are in support of doing the 300 and plus crosswalks, which totals, what did you say, around 370?
It'd probably be close to 350 with some engineering that would be.
So we're talking about a committee deciding what happens to less than $200,000, am I correct?
Well,
Like
if that's the decision that is made, then yes.
Okay, so that was just my point, is that, and I agree with Ms. Reed, if that is what we're gonna be doing, that shouldn't take a lot of time to decide what to do with that, lot of money. So I agree, I want us to not take forever or a very long time to decide on how to move forward with this sidewalk,
So
fund remaining monies.
are you comfortable with that the work group is only going to look at what is left over after the ADA compliant intersections?
Oh, well, I think that they should do the whole, I think that should be part of the whole thing. There may not be, so of those 319 are all,
There's varying degrees of need
Like-
for bringing them to code.
I would like, when this committee is done working, I want to know just exactly what's going to be done, how much it's going to cost, and what the time frame is going to be, so that we can finally make an informed decision about this. And I do want, and to everyone's point, I want this to be as quick as possible as well. I don't want to be rushed that we get sloppy work, but I think by February-ish, this committee should know where these projects are going to, or where they would like them to have them happen and bring them to council. And we can put some time frame parameters on there. I'm assuming a committee meeting is not going to happen before the end of the year, as everyone's very busy, but maybe we can put a time frame on it, 30 or 60 days for this committee to get together. You are the expert, and so are you as the city manager in kind of the city and how we can get this stuff done, but I definitely believe we should move quickly, and it should be part of the whole thing. It shouldn't just be for the remainder after crosswalks. Some of those may not need to be fixed at all, depending on if they're dead ends or something.
Well, I do have a question to pose that I don't know that could be Cullen's answer. You have a resolution on the books. Does that resolution need some action by council and then a new resolution made as to how you move forward? I'm just asking that question out loud, because I don't think we know.
So I suspect that once the committee gets together and says, hey, there's X amount of money, here's what we propose gets fixed, this is gonna cost this is gonna cost this, and then we can do a resolution, which would be to eliminate or revise the prior one, and this is how the money's gonna be spent. Does that make sense?
Yeah, my thought is this, you have a resolution from 2008 that subsequent thereto, your legal counsel has advised it's probably not consistent with the law, so I mean, I think A, that gives the council the authority to disregard it, and B, I think as a matter of good measure, when you determine what action you're going to take, you can do a new resolution that will supersede your former resolution.
Okay.
Can I
Councilman
have one
Williamson.
more thing to think about moving forward, please?
Go ahead.
So it sounds like we have kind of some consensus around how we want to make some next steps. But I do have one additional concern, and that's what do we do about sidewalks after this? So there's going to be some improvements made. There's going to be some great things that are happening, it sounds like. But what happens to the sidewalks that aren't going to be touched in our residential neighborhoods? What's the plan moving forward to fix those? Because at the end of the day, the people that we answer to are going to ask, well, you didn't fix my sidewalk and you still took my money. And so that was nice that you did the park, you did this crosswalk, but my sidewalk is still a mess. And so thinking about this in the context of that moving forward, it sounds like we're going to solve some short-term problems, but we need to have a long-term discussion. And I'm hoping that the city manager and Mr. Phillips will be able to advise us on how we should proceed moving forward.
Well,
City manager.
Your Honor, so that will be addressed as part of our capital improvement plan. And my goal is to have a draft capital improvement plan to the city council by October 1st. So for the long-term sidewalk improvement program, which will be part of the larger capital improvement plan, we will be addressing how we move forward with sidewalk improvements throughout the community.
And if and when it comes back as special assessments to property owners, I'm not going to be at all surprised, because that's the most likely way it'll get funded. Mr. Phillips.
Quick comment on that, though. As we move forward with the streets, and keep in mind, we have lead and copper issues that we have to deal with, water mains, sewers. All of that has to be included in the comprehensive capital improvement plan. And that's what we're looking at doing. As we do those streets, as we replace those water mains, the sidewalks in those projects would also be looked at the same time. By the time we get done in 20 years, all of our lead has to be done. I know it sounds like a long time. You'll still be alive. That's something to be thankful for.
These kids, I don't know.
So, but yeah.
Councilwoman Spicer.
Thank you. Just one final comment. I do want to say that the committee that's going to be looking at the sidewalk fund, I know this is going to happen, but I don't want Councilwoman Lawler's comment to get lost in that. I think that, I'm sure we're going to find some crosswalks probably in each precinct that needs to be repaired. So, and then with what's left, I do want to make sure that if we decide to do something, that if there's enough, that we can do something in each precinct so that everybody is benefiting from the sidewalk.
Absolutely.
If I could caution the council, because when we start delving into details like this, we're doing the committee's work, we may as well work on it. The council may as well work on this. We have to allow, I think we got a good direction from the council on where we want to go with this, and that is the council expects the Director of Public Services and City Manager to be working with citizens to be selected by council members from their precincts to work as a work group to come back with recommendations. I would not go beyond that at this point and start saying, let's put this limitation on it, let's put that limitation on it, because we're really taking away the power that we're trying to give to the citizens within the precincts to come up with a comprehensive plan moving forward. So your point is well taken, Councilor, but I'd rather keep it general and allow the committee to work on the details and come back with a plan. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. The first thing is, at your first meeting in January, you need to formally establish a committee and charge us with the duties that we are going to be responsible for. At that time, you will also establish the term for the committee, but when it is to complete its work, what work product you expect back from that committee, who is going to comprise that committee. That will all be handled by you at your first meeting in January. and then we will move forward.
Councilwoman Spicer.
Just one last thought. Was it suggested that each council member nominate or nominate someone to be on that committee? So it would be 1, 2, 6 people, comprised of 6? Okay. 7.
No,
You,
6.
no, 6? Okay.
6.
Thank you.
Any final comments from council? Okay, no,
We probably should formalize this in the meeting when this discussion point comes up about Holland Park. We should probably just say we're working towards a committee or something and make it a formal thing, and then formalize it in January, just as a motion.
okay. All right.
Very good.
They can
Any
talk
other
about
comments?
Holland Park, that's fine with me. There's a lot of positive people that want to see that done. So, yeah, you can name it.
Okay. Public comments this evening.
Levada Weeks, 917 Luther Drive. When this $50 a year started, I had 5 properties at the time. I live in a subdivision with 2 lots, no sidewalks. So I was charged for both of those plus my 3. So I have quite a bit of money in that little pot over 10 years. And I don't know what's happening to it, nothing, but I'd like to voice my opinion on the handicap going down crosswalks, because you don't understand until you're faced with handicap. You think, oh, I just step up the curb. My son-in-law just lost his foot, and it's very important to think about that.
Thank you.
Okay. You wish to do your city manager report now or at the next meeting?
At the next meeting, Your Honor.
Final comments by council members? Dealing with sidewalks, just with sidewalks. Okay. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll support.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? We're adjourned.